I think it's perhaps the best place to start, and if I might, Babs, you let me start with Odun. Yeah. I think it'd be really interesting if Odun, you could just share a bit with us about your entrepreneurial journey to date.
Right. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Odun Eweniyi. I'm co-founder and CEO at Piggyvest. I have been working in tech since 2013. So right after I graduated from university, I studied computer engineering in Covenant. I came out and I tried to get a couple jobs, didn't quite work out. And then I met up with my friends who were incidentally at the time building a platform called Paroles, which was a loyalty platform. And I joined them to work as a social media manager and ended up working with them for about 6 months. And then with them, I went on to co-found Push CV in 2014. We ran Push CV for about 2 years. Tried our hands at a few other projects that failed. And in December 2015, we got the inspiration for Piggy Bank, as it used to be called then. And it was from someone's tweet where she had saved in a physical box. And we thought, how about we try to digitize it and kind of make it easier for the average person, not have to get the physical box to be able to save in that way. And in 2016, we launched Piggyvest, and we've run that ever since. In the course of my journey, of course, I've also gone on to found First Check Africa, which is a pre-seed and seed fund that's targeted at giving the first check, almost quite literally, to teams that have at least one female co-founder. So that's the last 8 years in summer.
Exciting, and Babs, you and I know each other, but I think it'd be good to just share some of your journey, and tell us a bit about what you're doing with Kuda.
Thanks, Bibi. Thanks everybody for sort of inviting me here. It's a privilege and a pleasure for me to be here. So, I mean, the story of Kuda, I think for me, it started literally when I was probably about 10 years old. And I'd always, for some reason, I think I must have watched like one of the Hollywood movies about investment banking. So, I like the pinstripe suits, the red Ferraris, and I kind of wanted to be an investment banker. And then I was fortunate enough to intern in investment bank and very quickly realized that I definitely did not want to be an investment. It was one of the most horrible experiences. But somehow along the lines, I ended up sort of always working around banks. So I worked at PricewaterhouseCoopers for most of my career, and just fortuitously, all my clients were banks. So I audited banks pretty much most of my career. And then I also audited regulators. And when I left sort of private sector, I was headhunted to work in the government. And again, I kind of had to work with banks. So I was a special advisor on finance, and most of my role, involved talking to bank CEOs, talking to regulators. So I was always in and around the banking environment. And it was whilst in government that I, started reading up on sort of what was happening around the space all over the world, because it was evident to me that, banking in our environment was kind of broken. There was a lot of work that had been done in the past, but, there was a new sort of wave of people that I felt were not really catered for. So, and there's a movement around the world, sort of in Brazil. It came to the UK, I think just after after the global crisis. So a lot of entrepreneurs around the world started sort of thinking about new ways of offering financial services. And that's kind of how I sort of came up with the concept of, a digital only financial service offering And it felt really suited to emerging market because, you know, there are a lot of people that didn't have access. So with a mobile phone, you can get access. And then also in terms of pricing, the cost of banking and financial services generally typically was expensive. So it was how can you bridge, sort of give that access and at the same time make it affordable to the majority in an environment that the wealth is not as high as in the West. So that's really sort of how the thinking behind Kuda, how it started. There were lots of experiments, lots of failures, lots of just, you know, fantasizing, you know, this is not real, it's never going to work. But, you know, I think it's also kind of a story of just being really resilient and having faith and believe in you know, in the mission. And I think that is what is sort of, you know, is crystallizing today. It's still a really long way to go, but I think it's a pretty decent start.
Great. So I think, Babs, that's an interesting segue into, you know, the next question I was going to ask, and you really began to, you know, to touch on that, you know, for Kuda, which is really, you know, what is the problem, you know, that you've identified and how are you trying to solve for it? I'm going to throw that to Odun, and I'd like to hear your perspective, you know, on that.
Well, I mean, I think that at the time we were starting Piggy Bank, the thing that was clear to me was the lady who had broken the wooden box. When we ended up speaking with her, it turned out that she had 2 other bank accounts, right? She had 2 bank accounts, but she still felt the need to put the wooden box under her bed to save. And gauging the reaction on social media at the time was everyone wanted to get a wooden box, and everyone we spoke to had 2, like at least 2. The average young Nigerian already has 2 existing like legacy bank account that they use, but they still wanted an alternate, right? People were like wildly patronizing people who sold wooden boxes, and I thought that was interesting. I myself had 3 bank accounts at the time, and I was very tempted, if not that we were having a different conversation in our own group chat. So I thought that was very key. And when we started to dig around it, we realized that the habits that younger people who are more smartphone savvy, more likely to like interact with finances on their phones, were kind of different than the services that were being provided by the banks at the time to those people. And so we started to look into what does a product that is tailored to these habits, what does it look like? The flip side to that was also the fact that the barrier to entry, just like Babs was saying, it was high, right? At the time, I think in 2013, when we were opening GT Bank accounts, GT Bank was the only bank that was offering 0 balance accounts. When you wanted to open any other bank, you needed 2,000, some of them 20,000. It subsisted into 2016, where if you wanted to invest in treasury bills, bonds at the time, there was a minimum ranging from 100,000 naira to 1 million naira baseline to get into it. People, entry-level graduates at the time are earning 70,000, 80,000, 120,000. So subtly, they were being told that you don't have enough to participate. And we were determined to make sure that people like us, and indeed us, could actually participate. That's the problem we went in to solve.
So it's quite interesting. I'm sure that both of you at different stages in your journey, you know, have had to, you know, pivot and to think about, you know, the business that you're building. And Babs, I'd like to hear, you know, how you've dealt with that, you know, what the particular scenario was. And I'm going to come to you on that as well, Odun.
Yeah, so I wouldn't really say we've actually had to pivot. We've definitely had to change strategy, and that we do that continuously, because obviously the world doesn't stay the same, and we have to adapt to every situation we find ourselves in. But what we did do, I think we did a lot of experimenting. So, you know, we always knew that, you know, we wanted to fix a problem of affordability. So, whatever we're offering, we have to be able to offer it, at a low cost, and the lowest cost is free. And that's how we came to the concept of a free bank. But at the same time, we had to make money. So the first product we came out with was a lending product, and that was essentially to teach us how to monetize, how to earn money by issuing credit to consumers. I think at the time it wasn't actually a platform that was online only, that people could sort of go to and borrow money at. So that taught us a lot. Of course, now there's like a lot of companies that do that, but at the time, we just had no idea. We didn't know how it would work. We didn't even know if people would trust, taking money online. And so we did that, and then we felt comfortable enough that, okay, fine, people would take our money online, and we found a way to get it back. But will people actually give their money? So we came up with a concept like a savings product, not too dissimilar to what Piggy Bank or Piggyvest were doing at the time, except they were doing it a lot better than everybody else. But it did give us a great insight and a lot of confidence to understand and appreciate that there is a lot of sort of a huge percentage of the population that were confident enough and comfortable enough to deal with a faceless financial institution. You don't need the brick and mortar. So we basically adapt business based on the learnings from those two experiments, and it's what basically formed the sort of heartbeat of what Kuda today.
Excellent. And Odun?
Well, I mean, I like Babs, I wouldn't say we pivoted. I'd say that we built on an existing idea. So if you remember, I said that the inspiration for the company was people putting their change in an actual wooden box. So the product that we went to market with was save daily, weekly, monthly. That was it. Like you can save a minimum of 100 Naira daily, 500 Naira weekly, or 1,000 Naira and above monthly. But very quickly, just because the product was inspired by social media, feedback started to come in, right? It just wasn't enough. Right, you can tell people to save daily, weekly, but everyone's lifestyle, everyone's habits doesn't actually just fit that. So the first wave of feedback we got was some people don't always have money in their bank accounts because they're not salaried, and so that quickly inspired a new feature. And then there was people who said, well, I mean, I want to save, but my big problem more is retaining that money for a long time. Inspired a third feature. And it just went on and on and on like that until we had this ecosystem of products that was inspired by the user. So we were focused on how do you get your generation to be able to save for 90 days at a time, combine flexibility and discipline, combine affordability and accessibility, and still have a balanced product that somehow people can use on their phones, because we were also determined to not have to expend money on brick and mortar locations. And so that was kind of how we went into it. And we were led, and all of the pivoting or feature developments that we did was inspired by the feedback that we got from the people actually using it. So combined with the data of how they were using the platform, but a lot of it was inbound, people telling us, this is what we'd like to see from this product, this is what you should build next. Yep. Then we'll balance it out with the numbers and then go for it.
Fantastic. Babs, I'm going to ask you how you think about competition and potential competitors. And who do you view to be, competitions for the business that you're building, and who will your future competitors be?
Yeah, so I think firstly, I just need to be clear on what we're actually trying to do. And for us, our story is one of providing financial services to every African, wherever they may be. And that's because, there's a cause element to it. You know, of course we want to make money, but also, you know, it's led by a mission, you know, of making, you know, putting greatness in Africa. We've been used to having sort of substandard products and services for many, many years. So excuse me, for me, you know, it's one of how can we provide amazing quality, best practice, world-class standard to a group of people that haven't used to that, and offering it at an affordable price point. I'm not sure I don't know what everybody's thinking, but I'm not sure there's anyone that I've come across that is sort of, you know, thinking about it, you know, in that sort of big picture, with big picture view. But of course, there are a lot of different companies that are competitive with different elements of what we're doing, be it lending, be it savings, investment. You know, anyone that has the ability to take a customer money and utilize it for some kind of returns is competition. But again, I think competition is healthy. I embrace it. I think financial services, especially in a regulated environment, there has to be competition. I think the regulators will not allow a monopoly. It never happens. It's never happened anywhere in the world. And you know, what we're doing is not mainstream yet, you know, so essentially what we're doing is we're democratizing the usage of financial services. It's kind of like one of the last bits of democratization that's left. Everything else has been sort of done and it's super mainstream. Financial services is not mainstream yet. So we need competition to make it mainstream. But the way I view it, you know, it's like there's a huge pie, and then there's a small piece of like crumbs that, you know, is available right now for digital financial service companies. And without competition, we're going to stay in the crumbs phase. You know, we need to move over to the big pie stage. So for me, that's how I view competition. And I think the real tussle for top spot will start when we are on the big pie. We're not there yet. So for now, I think everybody needs to keep innovating. Everybody needs to keep getting access to capital. It's one of the things I'm promoting myself, trying to make sure that you know, innovators have access to capital, and you know, then after that we can really sort of, you know, advance and all sort of build relatively big businesses.
Okay, excellent. So you know, I think you've been a bit polite there, Babs, and I'm not going to push you, you know, more on that. But I get the impression that, you know, Odun is a little more outspoken. So Odun, I want you to talk about competition and how you think about competition. But I'm also going to ask you to segue from competition after you've dealt that, and also to talk to me about regulation. And I'm going to come back to you, Babs, on that regulation issue as well. Go ahead, Odun.
Right. You know, I largely agree with Babs on competition, but I will say that we view literally anyone that has a share of a user's card as competition. So I think that fintech right now is a competition for disposable income, and that's very scarce in Nigeria. So anywhere that users can park their disposable income, from us, probably to Kuda, to all the other fintech companies, are competition. Now, is that necessarily a bad thing? No, because the person who wins is the consumer and creativity, right? How can you make sure that more of that disposable income is coming to you? That's the work that we all like kind of wake up doing. So I don't think that you can necessarily view it as an us versus them thing. You have to be like laser focused on, I want more people on my platform, and I do want more people on my platform. I want all the people on my platform. So that's how we see it. Now, for regulation, I think that where we are today is such a large departure and an improvement from where we are when we started. in 2016 when we started, audience with the regulator was pretty tough. But today, you can like make a few calls, speak to someone at the CBN, speak to someone at the Securities and Exchange Commission and get clarity on the problem. And that's largely worked for us. We started as an antithesis to Babs, who's worked in this space. We started like very new, very green, and we had to experience a very steep learning curve. And it was very important to us to like start from there. So we started in partnership with an MFP and started to learn the ropes. And so if regulation wasn't improving with that journey, I confidently would say that we wouldn't be where we are today. It has. So it's not that we've not run into roadblocks, we have. And we've had like moments where they're like, you know, you have to come in and explain what you're doing. But the answer to that is that we went in and we did. And now we have a much more, I think 5 years has shown a lot of growth, because there used to be so many complaints, regulation, this regulation, that. I think that we're in a good place. I think that more than anything, the work that's been done by the NIBSS, by the CBN, by the SEC to kind of foster, because we've seen, right, Paystack get acquired by Stripe. We've seen Flutterwave become a unicorn all within the same 5 years. So I don't think that, like, for all the problems that we still have, we're not where we need to be. I don't think that you can really say that it's not helpful or it's not like progressive. I mean, you can say it's progressing because that's what it is. And I think that it takes both sides, stakeholders, regulators, reaching across the aisle to kind of make it work for both of us. Fintech is very new. Fintech is also very scary. And so I respect like the push and pull that's been going on. It's hard, but I think it's necessary.
So are you regulated, and who regulates you?
So we are regulated. We're regulated right now by the SEC, but we also have an MFB license, which we acquired in 2018. We've worked with that for a while, but we are growing into a digital asset management firm, which requires SEC regulation. So that's largely where we're headed.
Understood. And Babs, I know some of your views around this, but it'd be good to hear you talk about regulation and how you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is no way that there will not be friction between innovators and regulators. I mean, it's normal, and this is how it is all over the world. It's just, I think it's a matter of, what is the right balance? Because again, I don't think the regulators do not wake up to stifle innovation. They wake up because they need to protect consumers. Sometimes innovators.
Babs, we've lost you. Okay, I'm going to, while we try and get Babs back, Odun, there's a question from the audience, for you, which is, how do you proactively get feedback from your customers in order to make sure that the service works for them? Is there a process that Piggyvest uses?
Right. So what we've done is we've built like feedback into like almost every action that the user can take on the platform. You're saving, we're asking you, how can we improve this to serve you better? You're withdrawing, we're asking you, how can we improve this service to help you better? Every time something, you have a maturity on the platform, we're sending you an email that says, rate us, tell us how we can make Piggyvest better. On social media, our DMs are full of people telling us, this is how we want this service to go. My personal DMs are also open for people to be able to directly feedback to me. So the process is inbuilt in the app, but because of it's 2021, right? You get feedback in real time from your users on social media, via email, calls. We've also kind of made it fluid and easy for them to access either the platform or the people, right? tell us what you want to see, tell us what you want from Piggyvest, and we can see about making it happen. So that's kind of how we've been able to build it in. Every single action you take, from saving to taking out to maturing to sending money to a fellow user, all of those things have feedback loops built into them.
Excellent. I'm glad that we have Babs back with us. You were cut off midstream. Do you want to wrap that up on regulation?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. So sorry, my internet broke up. So I think, with regulation, it's just about dialogue, and it's about being a little bit grown up and understanding sort of the environment. I think the way I would describe sort of our journey with regulators, in spite of sort of my experience working with regulations in my previous life, as a company, it felt a bit like, a bunch of kids running around and causing chaos. And that's how we were generally viewed. But I think, with more dialogue and just, explaining and understanding that, okay, these guys are not trying to stifle, they just need to understand. We need to remove the ignorance and lack of understanding, and that, the onus is also on us to do that. So I think it's much better now, and it needs to be a continuous process of dialoguing. It is not easy to regulate, especially to regulate fintech. There's so many new things coming up every time. Not every sort of fintech entrepreneur, I would say, is sincere. But the regulator cannot know who is and who isn't. We're not helped with a lot of what is happening in terms of just generally people that are dishonest, that people that, just want to scam people. There's so many stories. So it is a really tough job. And I think as you scale, you get more sort of acknowledgement, and the regulator will listen to you, but you have to earn your stripes. You have to prove it. You have to follow sort of every step, and they will come around. And I think we're finding that with Kuda now.
Fantastic. So I have a question from the audience. I was hoping to leave our last 12 13 minutes for questions, but they're coming thick and fast. And this one is for you, Babs, and it says, you've raised a fair amount of capital in a short space of time. What is the plan to deploy that capital? And is expansion into other African markets on the cards?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we have raised what looks like a lot of money, but compared to the ambition we haven't even started raising yet. We're trying to sort of break into an industry that has been around for hundreds of years, in a very complex market. So it requires people that have done it in other developed markets. So if you look at what has been raised in those markets, we haven't even scratched the surface here. So we're definitely expanding to other African markets, not just African markets, other markets, period, wherever. So it's going to be, for me, it's a lifelong sort of commitment. So, and it's going to take time, but, the commitment is there. And people, I think, will start seeing Kuda in different parts of the world in the not too distant future.
Fantastic. I think you make the point. It's very much a capital hungry business, slightly different from, Odun's, type of business. But I think, Odun, how does Piggyvest differentiate itself, for example, from, a business like Sparkle?
Well, I mean, I think it's largely that we're very focused on one segment of it. I think there's savings, there's lending, there's investments, and there's banking that kind of tries to encompass all of that. And then there's us that tries to focus on just an aspect of that. So I think that's how we differentiate. Our plans for now don't include, for instance, trying to lend to users. We're open to like having people lend to our users, but we're not trying to lend directly to our users, for instance. So we're building an ecosystem of people where we're providing them with services like savings and investments, and eventually allowing other providers to kind of plug into this ecosystem that we're building to share with them other elements of financial services. At our core, we hope to become digital asset managers, right? So do we think that insurance is important? Yes. And do we think our users need to get insurance? Yes. Do we think our users need to get overdrafts? Yes. Do we think they need to get loans? Yes. Are we going to directly provide it for them? No. So I think ours might be a bit more collaborative, so to speak, than say a Sparkle who might be, and I don't know what their like roadmap looks like, but they might be trying to like keep all of those services within their own ecosystem. I guess now that we're all at the start, that might be how we're different.
Interesting. I'm going to go back to a couple of my questions because I think I've dealt the last few questions from the audience. And please keep the questions coming. Babs, what's your long-term vision around this business, and what does the future look like, for Kuda?
Yeah, so, and again, I think it's always great to dream. And I think dreaming gets you to places that you don't believe that, you don't necessarily, imagine that you would get to, but you dream about it. So for me, we're solving an African problem. Over the next few years, 30% of the world are going to be Africans. That's a lot of people. And I just believe that, there is an opportunity for some companies to emerge out of Africa to truly be world leaders. So, we talk about Facebook, we talk about Google, we talk about all these sort of big companies, the household names all over the world. And for me, that's the dream, to keep building, to get to that destination. There are a lot of, we're in a big market. I think if we're committed to that market, it provides us an opportunity to build a really, really big business and do good at the same time. So for me, that's simply the dream, and we'll keep dreaming and hope and keep achieving.
And there's nothing wrong with dreaming. I'm a big dreamer as well. So I'll encourage you to keep doing that, but you also got to make sure that you keep working hard to make those dreams come true.
Absolutely.
Odun, and what's your sort of vision for the business you're building?
Right. Like Bob said, we all dream of like the work that we're doing becoming the breakout one. And so our vision is for Piggyvest to be the one-stop digital asset management shop for like millennials and anyone who comes after them. And it's a very big one. When you hear about like the breakout companies in the world, they usually name all the social networks and the Amazons before they get to the finance companies. And we want that, like the story for Africa, to be different. Africa is a very complex continent, and it's been left behind for a long time. And our problem is infrastructural, is many things, but it's also economic. And I firmly believe that that's where fintech companies come in. So you can say, not to get too drunk on our own like Kool-Aid, but I think that for all intents and purposes, financial services companies, especially ones in tech, will save Africa, and we will be the ones to bring Africa into like kind of the present. And so really hope that we, along with Kuda, and every other company who's on this journey, is able to help do that.
Fantastic. Well, I've got roughly 4 or 5 minutes left. I'm really happy to take some more questions from the audience. And the next question says, how have you been able to scale in a short time? Was it from a large marketing budget or reliance on excellent services and word of mouth? Odun, I'll throw that at you very quickly.
Well, no, I didn't have a large marketing budget when we started. And so it was from offering excellent services and word of mouth. Thank you for that phrasing. I think that when Piggyvest started, we went back to the source of the inspiration, social media. And we went back literally like just hand to Twitter, putting out tweets that like we thought millennials could relate to and making sure that customer service was on point. First year, we only saved 21 million naira because you had to build that trust. But on December 31st of 2016, the end of the first year of our business, for every time someone went on Piggyvest to withdraw successfully and get their money successfully, they went back to social media to share it. And that created an interesting like network effect where people were suddenly asking, what is Piggyvest and how can I get started? And so we doubled down on that. Provide excellent services to your users, they will talk about it and more people will come. So from there, we built our own in-house referral system, doubled down on customer service, and then we grew from there. We've gone on to raise money and then market, but in the beginnings, the scale was really due to like people having conversations about the product.
Fantastic. And Babs, I'll just ask you to touch on that for 30 seconds.
Absolutely. Yeah, look, similar story. You don't start out with money. You have to prove yourself, and you have to show a level of product market fit. So the moment customers become your marketers, you're onto something. And it was the same for us, really just gave us the confidence to just double down and really go for it. We pretty much raised most of the money we raised was based, our deck was just full of customers saying things about Kuda, so it's really important to start off, in that manner. And yeah, so.
Fantastic.